Hello, Charlton. The story I've chosen to read for you is a folk story from the Shetland Islands, and it's told by Helen Waddell. It's called The Woman of the Sea. One clear summer night, a young man was walking on the sands by the sea on the Isle of Unst. He had been all day in the hayfields and was come down to the shore to cool himself, for it was the full moon and the wind blowing fresh off the water. As he came to the shore, he saw the sand shining white in the moonlight, and on it the sea people dancing. He'd never seen them before, for they show themselves like seals by day, but on this night, because it was midsummer and a full moon, they were dancing for joy. Here and there he saw dark patches where they had flung down their sealskins, but they themselves were as clear as the moon itself, and they cast no shadow. He crept a little nearer, and his own shadow moved before him, and of a sudden one of the sea people danced upon it. The dance was broken. They looked about and saw him, and with a cry they fled to their sealskins, dived into the waves. The air was full of their soft crying and splashing. But one of the fairy people ran hither and thither on the sands, wringing her hands as if she'd lost something. The young man looked and saw a patch of darkness in his shadow. It was a sealskin. Quickly he threw behind a rock and watched to see what the sea fairy would do. She ran down to the edge of the sea and stood with her feet in the foam, crying to her people to wait for her, but they had gone too far to hear. The moon shone on her, and the young man thought she was the loveliest creature he had ever seen. Then she began to weep softly to herself, and the sound of it was so pitiful that he could bear it no longer. He stood upright and went down to her. "What have you lost, woman of the sea?" he asked her. She turned at the sound of his voice and looked at him terrified. For a moment he thought she was going to dive into the sea. She came a step nearer and held up her two hands to him. "Sir," she said, "give it back to me, and I and my people will give you the treasure of the sea." Her voice was like the waves singing in a shell. "I would rather have you than the treasure of the sea," said the young man. Although she hid her face in her hands and fell again to crying, more hopeless than ever, he was not moved. "It is my wife you shall be," he said. "Come with me now to the priest, and we shall go home to our house, and 'tis yourself shall be mistress of all I have. It is warm you will be in the long winter nights, sitting at your own hearthstone and the peat burning red, instead of swimming in the cold green sea." She tried to tell him of the bottom of the sea, where there comes neither snow nor darkness of night, and the waves are as warm as a river in summer, but he would not listen. Then he threw his cloak around her and lifted her in his arms, and they were married in the priest's house. He brought her home to his little thatched cottage and into the kitchen with its earthen floor, and set her down before the hearth in the red glow of the peat. She cried out when she saw the fire, for she thought it was a strange crimson jewel. "Have you anything as bonny as that in the sea?" he asked her, kneeling down beside her, and she said, so faintly it could hardly hear her, "No." "I know not what there is in the sea," he said. "There is nothing on land as bonny as you." For the first time she ceased her crying, and sat looking into the heart of the fire. It was the first thing that made her forget, even for a moment, the sea which was her home. All the days she was in the young man's house, she never lost the wonder of the fire, and it was the first thing she brought her children to see. For she had 3 children in the twice 7 years she lived with him. She was a good wife to him. She baked his bread, and she spun the wool for the fleece of his Shetland sheep. He never mentioned the seal's skin to her, nor she to him, and he thought she was content, for he loved her dearly, and she was happy with her children. Once, when he was ploughing on the headland above the bay, he looked down and saw her standing on the rocks and crying in a mournful voice to a great seal in the water. He said nothing when he came home, for he thought to himself it was not to wonder she was lonely at the sight of her own people. As for the seal's skin, he had hidden it well. There came a September evening, and she was busy in the house, and the children playing hide and seek in the stacks in the gloaming. She heard them shouting, and went out to them. "What have you found?" she said. The children came running to her. "It's like a big cat," they said, "but it is softer than a cat. Look!" She looked and saw her seal skin that was hidden under the last year's hay. She gazed at it, and for a long time she stood still. It was warm dusk, and the air was yellow with the afterglow of the sunset. The children had run away again, and their voices among the stacks sounded like the voices of birds. The hens were on the roost already, and now and then one of them clucked in its sleep. The air was full of little friendly noises from the sleepy talking of the swallows under the thatch. The door was open, and the warm smell of the baking of bread came out to her. She turned to go in, but a small breath of wind rustled over the stacks, and she stopped again. It brought a sound that she had heard so long she never seemed to hear it at all. It was the sea whispering down on the sand. Far out on the rocks, the great waves broke in a boom, and close in on the sand, the little waves slipped, racing back. She took up the seal's skin and went swiftly down the track that led to the sands. The children saw her and cried to her to wait for them, but she did not hear them. She was just out of sight when their father came in from the byre, and they ran to tell him. "Which road did she take?" said he. "The low road to the sea," they answered, but already their father was running to the shore. The children tried to follow him, but their voices died away behind him, so fast did he run. As he ran across the hard sands, he saw her dive to join the big seal who was waiting for her, and he gave a loud cry to stop her. For a moment she rested on the surface of the sea. Then she cried with her voice that was like the waves singing in a shell, "Fare ye well, and all good befall you, for you are a good man to me." Then she dived to the fairy places that lie at the bottom of the sea, and the big seal with her. For a long time her husband watched for her to come back to him and the children, but she came no more. Cut.